Hello everyone and welcome back to a new tutorial. In this one I'm going to teach you how to make an Among Us voting system. If you follow me, you've already seen that I made an Among Us map with man modes that is a replica of the Mira HQ map, including a replica gameplay of Among Us. So in today's episode you will learn how to make a voting system similar to mine. This one requires all your attention, so I will try to be as precise as possible, and for once I will actually build it with you. You will see it's easier than it looks. So you have here your voting screen, your voting timer, and this mess that is a voting system. Starting with this timer, that is your voting time. It starts with 1, transmit on 2 when finished, and reinitialize on n. Following with the voting screen, there is only 2 devices, a trigger and a score manager. The trigger has only 2 attributes. It's triggered by damage and transmit on a channel that will change for each possible vote. In my example, it goes from 11 to 18 for the crewmates and 19 for the vote skip. So all you got to do is to set the trigger and copy it for each vote, changing the channel it transmits on. The score manager are only here to keep track of how many vote players have. Set to define, so the number have no minus or plus sign, they increase on each vote and reset with channel 1. To make it so player can vote and vote only once, use item granters to give them a gun at the start of the vote and give them something else like a gold to reset their inventory after they vote. The resetting item granters are triggered for each possible vote, to the player trigger, and for everyone at the end of the voting time. Now it's time to set up the actual voting system. Here you can see 3 triggers in the sequence space. The first and last one are for the tie that we will see just after. For now, let's set up the middle one that will be stacked up into a column. Those triggers transmit every X trigger, X being the number of possible votes plus 1. In my example, I have 8 crewmates plus 1 skip plus 1 is equal to 10. If you have 10 players, X would be equal to 12. This trigger is here to count the first possible vote, so it triggered with 11, which is the channel send when voting for white here. And it transmits on 21, channel 21 being the channel that will kill white. Notice how I use 11 and 21 for the player 1. This is a tip I give you so it's easier for you to understand what you are doing. The player 2 will be 12 and 22, the player 3 13 and 23, etc. So let's stack this up for each possible vote and change the trigger from and transmit on by 1 each time until 19 and 29. The column you just made will now keep track of how many times a player has been voted, and later when the sequencer will trigger them all, the first one to trigger will be the one that was the most voted before. Now for the tie system. The third trigger here is a copy of the second one. There is 1 for each possible vote, but there is 2 differences. They all transmit on the same channel, here channel 5, and they transmit every X-1 trigger. Remember the other column transmit every 10 trigger? Those one will transmit every 9 trigger. So let's stack this up before we continue. Now here on the side is a trigger that triggered with 5, transmit on 6 every 2 triggers, and reset with 4. And 4 is a channel triggered by the first trigger here at the start of our sequencer. That way, if 2 triggers of these columns are triggered before this one got reset, it means 2 players had the same amount of votes. And I set them to X equal 9, so they trigger before the actual vote results. At the end of the voting phase, channel 2 in my example, the sequencer will start and will be running until one of those triggers transmits a result. So we need to detect that with this trigger that receives for each result, and will transmit on 30 to stop and reset the whole system. So trigger from 21 and transmit on 30. Another one will trigger on 22 to 30 until 29 to 30, without forgetting the channel 6, which is a tie result. party will then stop the sequencer, reset every trigger of each column, and transmit on this trigger with a 3-second delay that will end your voting phase. And here you go, this is your fully functional Among Us voting system with a tie and a skip detection. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I can't wait to see what you create with this. Don't hesitate to tag me at @crossmcpenna on Twitter if you use this, and I will retweet it. It was Cross, and I see you next time.